Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take your notes, your research, your biggest gardening questions, and just, turn them into that quick hit of knowledge you're looking for.
Mm.
And you know the scene. The moment Thanksgiving is over, every big box store, every grocery aisle,
Oh, yeah. They're everywhere.
they just explode in this sea of red.
Yeah.
We are, of course, talking about the quintessential holiday plant, the poinsettia, or I guess for the botanists, Euphorbia pulcherrima.
They're truly unavoidable this time of year, and they serve such a spectacular, vibrant purpose as decor, which is, precisely why they're so effective commercially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But our source material this week really zeroes in on this fascinating contradiction. We treat the poinsettia like an annual. You buy it, enjoy it for 4 weeks then.
You struggle to keep it alive for a bit.
You struggle, and then you probably toss it. But the botanical truth, which the sources confirm, is that the poinsettia is actually a perennial shrub.
Right. In its native Mexico, it grows into a pretty sizable bush, sometimes even a small tree, reaching, 10 to 15 feet?
Exactly. It has this permanent life cycle just encoded in its DNA. It wants to be a lasting feature in your landscape.
Not a disposable decoration.
So that leads us directly to our mission for this deep dive. If this is a beautiful, striking perennial shrub, why don't we see them planted permanently in urban gardens? Why aren't they thriving in our neighborhoods?
We're going to dive deep into why the poinsettia's perennial potential is, it's totally vetoed by the single most pervasive environmental factor in our modern lives:
Urban light.
urban light. We're going to show you that the failure point isn't about giving it enough water or the right fertilizer. The constraint is a really specific, non-negotiable biological prerequisite related entirely to the absence of light.
Okay, so let's start with the attraction, the thing that drives this question in the first place. You shared notes from a gardener who was genuinely tempted, truly seduced by a massive nursery display,
Oh, I get that.
and felt that impulse to try and cultivate one as a permanent feature. And I totally understand that pull.
The common red one is beautiful, but the moment you see the full range of colors that exist, that temptation just becomes overwhelming.
Yes.
The sources mention being captivated not just by the popular deep reds, but by these stunning, distinct displays featuring creamy yellows and soft pinks.
And even the marbled ones.
Yeah, and the marbled varieties, it's incredible.
Right. When you see a little potted poinsettia, you think, cute holiday pot. But when you imagine a 5-foot-tall shrub covered in that incredible color,
You think, that's a spectacular evergreen feature for the backyard.
and that color is the key. And it's important to clarify right now for you listening that those magnificent colored parts, they aren't actually flowers.
No, they're not petals. They're specialized leaves called bracts. The actual flowers are those tiny little yellow buds you see clustered right in the center.
That is such a crucial distinction. The entire visual appeal, the thing that makes us want to grow this perennial, is the color change in the leaves, the bracts. So the question remains, if it's classified as a permanent shrub, why does all the anecdotal evidence confirm we just don't see them thriving year after year?
That disconnect between classification and reality tells you something fundamental is missing.
Yeah.
And if you're a typical gardener, you'd probably assume the failure is due to one of the usual suspects.
That's where I would start. I'd immediately assume it's a warmth issue. It's native to Mexico, to Central America. So surely the perennial potential is vetoed by, a cold North American winter, right? That seems like the most common sense barrier.
And that's absolutely true for outdoor survival in most regions above, say, hardiness zone 9 or 10. If you plant it outside in Minnesota, it is definitely going to die in December.
Right.
But that's not the whole story, because even people who bring them indoors put them in a perfectly heated, sunny room, or even those who live in warm southern climates where they could survive the winter.
They still can't get them to bloom again.
They still struggle. The plant just won't do it the following year.
So if they're not dying from cold and they're not suffering from disease and neglect, the problem must be the failure to produce those spectacular colored bracts the second year.
That's it. It survives, but it stays a plain, unremarkable green shrub.
It retains its life, but it loses its appeal.
Exactly. So this tells us the limiting factor isn't maintenance. It's the specific environmental trigger required to initiate that color change. And this is the moment we move beyond simple gardening facts into plant biology.
Okay, let's talk plant biology then. What is the specific, non-negotiable switch that needs to be flipped for this plant to turn those green leaves red?
This is where we introduce the critical concept that determines the poinsettia's fate. It's called photoperiodism.
Which sounds incredibly dense, but it's actually a beautiful fundamental concept, isn't it?
It really is. Photoperiodism is just the plant's physiological reaction to the length of light and darkness over a 24-hour cycle. And we classify poinsettias as short-day plants. They need a long period of darkness to trigger the hormonal cascade that tells the plant, okay, time to produce colored bracts and set flowers.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the required duration of darkness is so incredibly precise. It's not just needs a long night.
That's right. To successfully transition and get those vibrant colors, the poinsettia demands a minimum of, get this, 12 to 14 hours of total uninterrupted darkness.
Uninterrupted.
Every single day. And this cycle has to be maintained for several weeks, usually 6 to 8 weeks leading up to when you want it to bloom.
Uninterrupted. That is the absolutely critical word. This isn't just about turning the lights off when you go to bed.
No.
This is like setting up a military operation to ensure absolute blackout conditions for half the day, every day, for 2 months.
Think about the hormonal signal inside the plant. It's built around an internal timer that evolved in a natural environment where day and night are really distinct. When that long stretch of darkness hits, the 12th, 13th, 14th hour, it triggers flowering hormones. But that timing mechanism is incredibly sensitive.
So if someone is trying to rebloom their poinsettia, say, in October, and they're 6 weeks into this rigorous darkness schedule.
And suddenly, on day 40, someone walks into the room at 10 p.m. and just flips the light switch for 30 seconds to grab a book.
That's it. That one brief moment of light exposure just completely disrupts that hormonal rhythm.
It effectively tells the plant, false alarm, long night hasn't arrived yet. And it resets the entire process back to zero.
It resets the internal clock.
It resets the clock and prevents the chemical change. The bracts stay green. And if that light disruption happens repeatedly, you will simply never achieve color.
That extreme sensitivity is the biological showstopper. Now we have to connect that pristine, scheduled, dark environment to the reality of the modern built world. So what does this all mean for you, trying to grow this magnificent perennial in a typical urban or suburban setting?
It means the biological requirement clashes violently with the concept of urbanization. When we look at urban light pollution, we are talking about a relentless 24-hour interference pattern.
And that's what vetoes the poinsettia's perennial ambitions outside of a controlled greenhouse.
It's the sheer lack of true, reliable darkness. Even on the darkest night, cities just glow.
They glow.
Precisely. If you place this perennial in your backyard or even in a sunroom that faces the street, you are immediately inviting a whole host of light sources that make maintaining that 12 to 14-hour blackout. Well, it's nearly impossible.
Let's run through the specific sources mentioned because they really are everywhere. First, you've got the omnipresent glow of streetlights.
The primary culprits. They bathe entire neighborhoods in a low, constant level of light. Even if it's not shining directly on the plant, that scattered light is often enough to register on its sensors.
It tells the plant it's not truly night.
Exactly. Then you have house lights.
Right, from human activity, turning on and off at random times, or, family member gets up for a drink of water in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. And you can't forget the most aggressive and unpredictable source of all.
The car headlights.
Passing car headlights. That quick high-intensity flash that sweeps through a window or across a garden, sometimes multiple times an hour.
So that brief flash from a FedEx truck driving by at 3 a.m. is enough. Enough light, enough exposure to reset a 12-hour biological process.
And prevent your prized perennial from ever achieving that red color.
Yes. The conclusion is simply unavoidable. The pervasive light pollution in our cities means that achieving that long, uninterrupted darkness, it's just not a viable option.
Not unless you literally dedicate a closet or a room to be a light-sealed chamber for 2 months every fall.
Right.
So the poinsettia's beautiful perennial potential, the shrub that wants to be a small tree, is just overridden by the light of the city.
It's an environmental veto on its primary aesthetic feature. It survives, sure, but it can never fulfill its potential because its critical biological prerequisite just cannot be met in our world.
Which is fascinating because the fact that we see them everywhere tells us this prerequisite is being met.
It's not by us.
Not by the home gardener. It's a testament to the power of commercial agriculture. That's the magnificent paradox, isn't it? The success of the poinsettia lies entirely in its commercial utility, not its ecological fit in your backyard.
Professional nurseries don't leave this to chance.
Not at all. They invest heavily in controlled environments precisely to guarantee that requirement. They use mechanized systems like huge, heavy-duty blackout curtains and timed shade structures that seal the plants in absolute darkness at the exact same moment.
Every single night.
Every single night for 8 consecutive weeks.
They are essentially recreating the pristine, dark conditions of a non-light polluted environment. And they time it so perfectly that the plant achieves peak, spectacular color right when we all start our holiday shopping.
The home gardener's disappointment that wish that they could keep this shrub going year after year is contrasted so sharply with the plant's wildly successful commercial application.
It's cultivated, colored, and distributed to be a short-term, seasonal, decorative miracle.
And it excels at that manufactured role.
What a beautiful insight into how deeply biology and commerce intertwine. It's a plant defined by what we force it to do, rather than what it naturally could be. Thank you for sharing these sources and letting us truly understand this.
Of course.
The perennial success of the poinsettia is determined not by ideal soil, not by perfect temperature, but by the guarantee of total, reliable darkness.
And this raises a really important question for you to consider as you go about your day. If we connect this extreme sensitivity of the poinsettia to the bigger ecological picture, how many other biological processes are out there? In local flora, in migrating insects, or even in ourselves.
Yeah.
How many of them are critically dependent on these highly specific natural light and dark cycles that are being subtly eroded or completely disrupted by our increasingly light-polluted world?
It really makes you look at that neighborhood streetlight or even the glow outside your bedroom window a little differently.
It does.
Something for you to mull or explore on your own. We'll catch you next time for the next Deep Dive.